Welcome to today's episode of Hauntic, where legend blurs with history and the dead refuse to rest. In this episode we're going to be journeying to the Steel City of Sheffield in England. The year is 1742, the hills are quiet, the church bells long since faded into the wind, and a cold mist rolls across the graveyard of St Nicholas Church in High Bradfield. But beneath the soil lies a terrible secret, or rather, the absence of one. For more than half the graves here are empty, the bodies stolen by the notorious body snatchers of the 18th century, the Resurrectionists. During the 1740s, medical schools had an insatiable demand for fresh cadavers. Grave robbers prowled churchyards to meet that demand, and the graves of St Nicholas were prime targets, perched high on the hills and surrounded by fields that offered easy escape routes. In response, the watchtower by the entrance was built, a grim solution allowing grieving families to guard their loved ones' resting places just long enough that the bodies became useless to surgeons. For many, however, the protection came too late. Countless corpses were stolen, their slumber disturbed, their souls restless, and it's said that these spirits still wander the churchyard, bound forever to the place they were torn from. Visitors to the churchyard often report eerie phenomena that defies explanation. Those who dare wander among the headstones after dark have described light anomalies, strange flickering orbs and darting shadows caught in photographs, disembodied voices and groans, whispers on the wind or agonising moans that seem to rise as if from the earth itself, and even full-bodied apparitions, pale figures drifting between the graves, thought to be the lost souls of the exhumed, searching endlessly for peace. All of the sightings serving as an unsettling reminder that the spirits of St Nicholas's Church never truly sleep. St Nicholas's Church is always a location that will hold a very special place for me. When I first set about researching for my book Haunted Yorkshire, I spoke to a lot of paranormal groups, and St Nicholas's Church is a name that came up over and over again. The building itself really is truly stunning. It's set high up above Sheffield, it's got a backdrop that goes over some moors, it's just absolutely beautiful. And whether or not you're lucky enough or unlucky enough to experience any genuine phenomena whilst you're there, the fact that half the graves underneath are empty just is so macabre in itself that it makes it worth the visit. Grave digging is synonymous with Burke and Hare, the Edinburgh murderers of 1828 that decided, rather than dig up fresh cadavers to sell to the medical profession, it'd be a lot easier just to kill them. And it was these prolific murderers that gained all the fame from that old profession, but in actual fact some of the very first cases of body snatching were reported in 1742, right here in South Yorkshire. That's 86 years before the infamous reign of Burke and Hare. And those original body snatchers were from a group called the Resurrectionists, and their prime location was St Nicholas's Church. For a short time, the Resurrectionists went about their macabre and quite lucrative business undetected. But when the residents of High Bradfield realised that they were being targeted, they took steps to stop it. A watchtower was built at the entrance to the church grounds, something that's still there to this day. And when a family member or loved one was buried within the church grounds, someone would inhabit that tower for a few days after, ensuring that a lamp could clearly be seen from the top window, which would potentially ward off any thieves that were thinking about digging up the corpse. They'd remain at their post for anything up to a week, swapping shifts with other people during that time. After the week, the rotting corpses would no longer be viable to a surgeon and therefore worthless and not worth digging up. As you can imagine, after the scandal was uncovered, people were reluctant to have their loved ones' graves exhumed, and therefore it's genuinely unknown how many of the graves are empty at present, although it's believed to be over half. Fast forward 90 years through time, and body snatching ceased around 1832 when the infamous trial of Burke and Hare brought the horrific money-making racket into the public eye, giving cause for the Autonomy Act to be passed, which really tightened the regulations upon doctors and surgeons.
It's the end of the line.
During the research for Haunted Yorkshire, I came across a chap called Matthew Frost, who claimed that in 2012, he was able to stay over in the watchtower to perform a paranormal investigation. This is Matthew's story in his own words. It was a Friday night and we set up in the watchtower with cameras covering the graveyard and suspected graves of interest. The night was quite disappointing at first. From 6 in the evening until nearly 4 in the morning, not a single thing occurred. Then, out of nowhere, strange groans were heard floating around the churchyard. We dashed to the window to look, and there we saw what appeared to be flickering shadows wandering between the graves. The noise was really strange, more like something you'd expect to hear in a cheap zombie movie than in real life. I remember it also went really cold. I know it was winter, but I mean really cold. But our digital thermometers didn't change at all. We watched on as the shadowy beings walked the churchyard and filmed them with a handheld camera, as well as the camera that we'd set up all night at the top of the window of the watchtower. The really bizarre and quite disappointing thing happened when we checked our footage the following day. There were no shadows, no light anomalies, and unfortunately, no groaning sounds. You can hear us react to the phenomena, see the cameras looking over at the points of interest, and hear us discussing the events unfolding before our eyes, but not a single thing was captured on film. I'm positive we saw the restless spirits of High Bradfield burial ground that night, but I guess they really didn't want to be seen. I suppose that's the strange thing about the paranormal.
I know.
When I spoke to Matthew, he was aware that I was researching for Haunted Yorkshire. He allowed me to look over the group's video footage, and the reactions did seem like genuine fear, something that would have been pretty hard to fabricate. I asked him if I could make a copy to review at a later date, and he declined, something I did think was a little odd. Now, to keep balanced, we need to remember that the group, by their own admission, were a team of ghost hunters. They were looking for spirits and expecting to find spirits. They were sitting in the middle of a graveyard that's well known to be missing half of the dead bodies that should be underneath. It was the middle of winter, they were cold, they might have been bored after probably 10 hours of sitting doing nothing, again by their own admission. And the remote location, it attracts various animals and wildlife, and it's not unreasonable to suggest that the group may have been experiencing some kind of pareidolia. But then we also balance that with the fact that whilst Matthew Frost was the person that I spoke to and shared his story and his video footage with me during my research, his story is not an isolated one. There are literally hordes of people from all different walks of life who claim to have experienced either the same or very similar phenomena at St Nicholas's Church in High Bradfield. Some of them are ghost hunters, some of them are normal people visiting the church, some are historians, a whole wide spectrum. Some people argue that graveyards would statistically be the least haunted places because the body, the soul, had no attachment to the graveyard at the time of dying. However, many other people, myself included, would be more inclined to say that the bodies are within that graveyard and therefore there is some substance to the theory that a graveyard could be haunted. Legends of graveyard hauntings are very common, but St Nicholas's Church carries a uniquely chilling truth. Most of the graves really are empty. The trauma of stolen rest, bodies ripped from consecrated ground, resonates with the folklore and the restless dead across all kinds of different cultures. It may be that the stories endure because of this historical wound. Each ghost sighting a reminder that the past refuses to stay buried. But if you ever find yourself in or around the Steel City of Sheffield in the United Kingdom, my advice is, go and check it out for yourself. I'm Nick Tyler, and this has been your Haunted Podcast, where history's shadows blur with legend. If you enjoyed what you heard, please do take a second to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And until next time, sleep tight.